Hello again and welcome, my friends. I'm Ryan Campbell. Thank you for joining me on the conversation. I'm here joined with my friend Mike Mazouch. Mike is our county's you're our director of animal control.
Yes, I am.
I always
Ryan.
want to call you the chief for animal control.
You can call me
'cause
chief,
I
but
think of you as like the sheriff of animal control.
Basically, I
Yeah.
am, and thank you for having me today, Ryan.
Really great, and there's so many things I want to talk to you about. I'm a lover of animals, as I know you are.
Yes.
A lot of our viewers are lovers of animals, but just to kind of start out, can you tell me, what is animal control? It's a more complex thing than I think most people realize, and you deal with a lot of quasi law enforcement type elements in addition to servicing, the needs of the animal population.
Correct. Yeah. As an animal control agency, we're responsible for two things through the state of California. We have many mandates that we help follow, but there are two things. We have to enforce rabies control, which is the number one issue for us, as all of our officers are rabies control officers. So we're responsible for making sure animals are vaccinated for rabies and quarantine animals that have been involved in a bite with a human or against wildlife. So those are our major things for the enforcement of ordinances and state codes. We also are responsible for sheltering all the stray and injured and abandoned animals in the county. So that gives us two roles. We shelter and we do the enforcement. So we have a team of officers that does all the enforcement and the impounding of animals at large. And then we have a shelter staff and a registered veterinary technician that take care of the animals once we get there. On a typical year, we usually see about 1,100 to 1,150 animals in our shelter.
Wow.
And this year we're pushing 1,300 right now as of today. I think we're at 1,304 that have come in the shelter.
Huh.
And that's due to several socioeconomic reasons. People are having a hard time taking care of animals, and they need to feed their families first and pay for their rent and their mortgages. So there's a lot of animals that have been dropped off and abandoned at our shelter.
Is that typically what happens? Is people will actually drop the animal off at the shelter, or do they just kind of? I remember when I was a kid, I grew up on a farm, and we would all of a sudden have a random cat or dog on our farm because people would just drive out to the country, let their animal go.
Yes.
And does that happen?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It happens both ways. We do have a night deposit that's open 24 hours a day. So if people do get in that situation, they can drop off an animal. We do have paperwork there. We hope that when they do turn it in, we understand that happens. We just need some information for the animal. We hope they turn that in. A lot of people don't, and it's understood. They're already feeling kind of, ashamed that they're doing this. But then we are seeing an increase in animals abandoned in like faraway areas that they just drop off at the end of a road.
Yeah.
So we are seeing an increase in that this year.
Yeah, that's a hard thing because it's like you want to encourage people to do what's best for the animal, which at least, taking them to animal control, they're going to get some care.
Yes.
They're going to get fed.
Right.
But then you're right, there is that stigma. That,
it is.
Why are you?
And it is a big stigma, and I can understand that for people trying to take care of their family and their animal, has to go. So I understand them wanting to be kind of like anonymous with that. It has increased our intake this year by about 200 animals right now. So it is putting a little bit of strain on our ability to get animals out in a timely manner. But we work with some great organizations. We work with FOAC, Friends of the Animal Community. We have transports usually twice a month that come down from Oregon and Washington and take cats and dogs, and they take them to Portland and Seattle. So we do have good resources that way, and we're starting to do more adoptions here at our shelter, typically than we have in the past. So that's helping our population.
Yeah. Well, and what's so fascinating to me about animal control and the job that you do and your staff, it's one of those careers where, when I was a kid, I wanted to take care of animals, and a lot of us have that dream when we're kids, we want to grow up and work with animals, but then we grow up and we end up not doing that, and we do other careers. But you stuck with it.
I have stuck with it for a while now.
Can you tell me, is there something that inspired you to to make caring for animals a career?
I started, 2006 was when I started this career, and I had no idea what I was getting into. But the first week I was there, the compassion I saw with the people I worked with, the amount that they gave their all, and what they were trying to do, would just absolutely made me think this is something that I need to do for the rest of my life. And till this day, I still go out in the field and I do calls with officers, and there are some things that there are a reason why I still do this job. Just getting animals out of neglectful situations, being able to see people come and adopt a dog with their family and have a forever home is really satisfying. It's a very tough job. You're not only enforcing laws, you're also a counselor to families who have problems with animals or taking care of them. You listen to people's problems. You do a multi-role job doing this. So it's a very rewarding job. It's tough, but the times that it's good, it's really good and makes you think about that.
Yeah, and how big is your staff? So how many?
We have 14 staff members.
Yeah.
We have 4 field officers, a supervising animal 2 supervising animal control officers, and then we have the kennel staff of 7 people, and that includes our registered veterinary technician who takes care and does health checks on all the animals and everything. So.
And I imagine you guys get some pretty odd calls on a daily basis. I mean, I'm going to take a wild guess to say most of the animals that you work with are probably dogs and cats.
Yes, correct. The majority are.
But we're in a rural community.
Yes.
We've got wild animals. We've
Yes.
got horses. We've got agricultural.
Yes.
Or livestock.
Right. So not only dogs and cats, we respond to anything that is four-legged, with a tail, with wings. We do a lot of equine and cattle calls. There's always loose cattle in this county just because there's so many cows. And people crash into fences a lot, and that's one of the problems. There's always a hole in a fence from a car crash. So we deal with a lot of those. We deal with quite a bit of wildlife. We do a lot of injured deers. We take a lot of deers to rehab. And since we're responsible for rabies testing for a lot of the animals, we do deal with skunks, raccoons, and foxes.
Yeah.
So we do a lot. We get a lot of calls for a lot of different kinds of animals during a typical day.
Yeah. What's the most exotic kind of animal you've encountered in your career?
In my career, I think, when it be up here, I started in Orange County, and the most exotic animal I had ever seen was an equine, which is sort of it's a South American anteater-like type animal.
Kind of looks like an armadillo, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
So somebody had found, supposedly somebody saw something weird at a park, and they didn't know what it was, so they called us, and when we went there, we were like, we didn't know what it was either, so we had to take pictures of it and talk to Fish and Wildlife. But somebody had illegally got several of these animals and figured they weren't good pets and let them go in a park. So I think there were like 10 or 12 that we finally caught.
Wow.
But yeah, that's quite bizarre.
How do you feed something like that? I mean, you can't just catch do you catch a bunch of ants? And
yes, I think we had to give it
Really?
insects till Fish and Wildlife
Wow.
got there. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was different. I've seen some alligators and black caiman at other places. Haven't seen too much up here.
Yeah.
That's not. I mean, there's some buffaloes up here, and there's ostriches.
Really?
Yeah, there's some buffaloes.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
I know about the ostriches.
Yeah, there's some buffalo.
There's a couple guys that are real big into
Yeah.
emus and alpacas.
Yes, there's a lot of those up here.
And llamas.
Llamas.
Got some
And there's a
people.
lot of pigs too, so
Yeah.
we deal with a lot of that.
Yeah.
A lot of traffic incidents with pigs.
Oh, really?
Yeah, get out on the highway.
Do they just? Is there something about pigs that they get in the way?
Just because they root around, they like to get under
okay.
fences, and some of them, a couple of them, we've had to have jumped out of their trailers on the way to auction. So
And you mentioned you rehabilitate injured deer.
We do have a couple wildlife rehab people
Yeah.
that if the deer isn't injured, too severely, that we can take them to.
Interesting.
And yeah, and they
And
can
then they
look
get
up-
released back in the
Yeah,
wild.
so they
Yeah.
can release them back to the wild. Yeah, they do that with deer and it's usually fawn, like baby fawns and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are different groups in the county that they focus on, like, there's elite, where
Correct.
it's about transporting larger livestock animals during an emergency. And I know you've had to that's been activated a number of
Yes.
times.
So
How does that work?
So we have two groups that that are totally 100% volunteer driven. That is Team Elite, and it stands for the Evacuation of Livestock in Tuolumne Emergencies. And what they do is they are a truck and trailer team that specializes in removing livestock from fires or any kind of natural disaster, and transports them to wherever we're going to need them taken to. So we've worked with them over the past probably up 5 years now, and they're just a great organization. It's run by Jolyn Miller. They have about 10 to 11 truck teams that we can get up here probably within 2 hours with any major incident. So, which is really a good response time to have a stock trailer up here and ready to go. And we have called them. Last summer, we had called them on standby a couple times because we saw some fires that were breaking out, and they get up here and get ready to go. And then we also have ACEs, which is a volunteer group that just does the sheltering of animals. Once we determine where the shelter is going to be at, the evacuation shelter, they go there and set up all the cages and make sure all the animals are taken care for. And that's mainly comprised of, there's many registered veterinary technicians on there, and there's several doctors of veterinary medicine that participate in that too. And they're all from the county, and they volunteer their time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that a lot of people might not realize about you is that you have a lot of experience with animal evacuation, those types of issues, and so you've done a lot of traveling in the past couple of years.
Yeah.
You're kind of a hot commodity in communities when there's an emergency.
I have been called to help.
How many different counties have you
I've helped in Butte County,
worked in?
Calaveras, Butte County, El Dorado County, all the way up the western slope. Started in Paradise, and we've done all the Caldor and the North Complex fire a couple times. So been called there to help run their EOC, Emergency Operations Center for Animals and stuff like that, and just help with my expertise on having to do that. It's come in great being able to go there and shown what I've learned from our county, getting very prepared compared to even these other counties that I thought would be have more stuff in place for animals. But we're actually, people call me now and talk to me about Elite and ACEs and things to that effect. So, and all of our officers have been trained by Cal Fire for just some training for wildland fire technique, how to not get injured and things like that. So we have turnouts and all that, and when we send people, we send them in full gear. They're some of the only ones that can go behind the fire lines and do the evacuation. So it's nice here. They usually call us during the season. I say if we don't have a fire here in Tuolumne County, we can send somebody.
Yeah.
So, and so far that's worked out well. So with all the work we've done here.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Is there an experience in your career that kind of stands out in your mind that that when you think about the different calls you've been on that illustrates why you do what you do?
Yeah, there are several. More recently, there's been several in Tuolumne County. Just remember when I was assisting an officer with some very neglected mini horses out in the Groveland area. And you never know what you're going to see when, you show up on scene or anything. And, a lot of things are exaggerated on phone calls, so just kind of have to take it for what it is. But when I got there, I was absolutely horrified what I saw. So there were several very neglected animals there. We were able to seize them. our hearing was upheld and finally went to court, and it's been through the system, and we were able to get those horses the care they needed. One even had partial prosthetic leg that was donated by Sweet River Equine. They made it a prosthetic leg because it had been neglected so bad for so many years. So things like that you can see the outcome of the animals, and you can see them from when you saw them, and then now they're at a home 4 or 5 years later. It's just a good thing. And people still show pictures of that one little horse, and it's just good. It's good to see that. Yeah.
How big is the need for adoptive homes for animals that come into the shelter?
It's very big. It's probably one of the major factors of us having to euthanize animals. Sometimes. We do euthanize animals, which is unfortunate, but the main reason we do is due to space, because we don't have enough people adopting animals. And the problem is that we are a very small shelter, so when we get full fast, and sometimes we have to make choices that are not very good. But we have to have room for other animals. So that's the hardest thing that we face, is when we get full shelter and nobody can take them. It's really hard to see that.
Do you have volunteers?
No, we do not have volunteers this time, but hopefully sometime in the beginning of next year, we have a volunteer program we've been trying to get together, and we're working on finalizing that, and we will have volunteers, which will help that.
Because that makes me think there are so many. I mean, we have a very very animal supportive community.
Yes, very.
Everybody's got a dog, or a cat.
Right.
Many people have horses.
Right.
And so it seems like there would be a pretty large pool of people there that wants to help.
Yes, and in the last several years, we've gotten more Facebook savvy, and we're doing this show with you now. We're doing other things with Access Tuolumne. We're doing live broadcasts from our Wilco adoption events. We're doing Pet of the Week. We're doing things, and those things have...
Who's the Pet of the Week? Let's say next week. What's
next
the Pet
week.
Of the week?
I don't know yet. I haven't picked it out.
Okay.
Okay. So I don't get to pick that out. I've been voted out of that. So
that's like one of the best perks.
My staff has voted me out. I don't name animals, and I don't do that. But they get to choose that. So we're going to start doing that again. So that actually has increased our adoptions. I don't know the number exactly, but I would say we're over 50% of what we did last year at this time, just because of those little things. We also took dogs to the Christmas parade this year, and we adopted one of the dogs during the parade.
Really?
So that's
wonderful.
Yeah, we have them, but when they go out, they're microchipped, they're vaccinated, they're licensed, they're ready to go. So if anybody wants them, they just have to see how they're doing. And
so if somebody's interested in adopting an animal, how would they? What's the best way to contact you or get some more information about animal control?
The best way to actually come down to our shelter in Jamestown on Victoria Way and look. Our hours are from 9 to 2. The front door's open, but if you call us, we will always open the door for somebody to come look at a dog. Just because our door's shut, it doesn't mean anybody's there. There's somebody taking care of an animal 24/7, all the time there. We'll let you look at a dog or a cat. So they just need to come down. You can also go on the county website and go to the Animal Control Services, and it has an email on there and some links for Facebook and like that. Yeah.
I wanted to switch up a little bit, because you and I had a conversation years ago, and it was about rabies, which is a big part of your job.
Right.
And you explained to me that it's cyclical. It was one of those conversations where I ran home and went on Wikipedia and was like, wow, that is really interesting.
Yeah.
Could you tell me a little bit about how does rabies work in our community, and why is it so dangerous?
Okay. So rabies is a fatal virus. Not many people know that.
It's basically 100% fatal.
Yes, 99.9% fatal. So the big danger in this community with rabies is our wildlife interaction. So we're on the western slope. which is a very mild winter actually. You know, we get our bad winters, but there's always wild animals around. They don't migrate to one area that much or anything. So, and there are lack of fences in this county. A lot of people don't have fences to keep their animals in. Or if their animals are in a fenced area, it is a large area where they're watching livestock or things like that. So they have a tendency for wildlife to walk through those areas. And the big problem animals are skunks, raccoons, and foxes. They're just natural carriers of rabies. They account for a lot of our rabies tests, and along with bats. So, and the only way to prevent rabies is having a rabies vaccine. So, there are a lot of animals in this county that are not vaccinated for rabies, but that's what we always try to push. If you do one thing, I'm not telling you to get your dog license, even though it is a county ordinance. We would like for you to at least have a rabies vaccine, because that will save a lot of hassle if things happen. Right. So
and they can get one at animal control?
No, we don't give them. We don't have a doctor on staff. It can
I
only
see.
be given by a doctor, so it has to be done through a local vet. But 3 times a year we put on rabies clinics.
Yeah.
We put them on in the spring, so we have reduced rabies vaccine clinics. So the fee is really cheap. It's $10 a shot.
Oh,
So
wow.
we have 2 of them at the shelter, and I think we're going to do 4 actually this year.
Yeah.
So we have 4 of those. So that's one way, because there's a lot of bad things that happen when your animal gets in contact with wildlife. It has to be tested. The animal has to be quarantined. So you can take all those risks away by having your dog vaccinated, dog or cat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
and it's cyclical too.
It
though,
is
isn't it?
cyclical.
We'll have years where there's tons of rabies
Right.
around, and then years where
Right, and it goes by species. Like I think it was 5 or 6 years ago when we were talking, is when our skunk population was just going through it left and right. I think we tested upwards of 40 positive skunks that year, and then the next year it dropped off to where we didn't even test a skunk. And I don't think this year we tested a skunk. We just tested a raccoon yesterday because it scratched an individual. It came back negative.
scratched a person.
It scratched a person, yeah. So we tested quite a few bats.
Man, I can't remember that. I've seen several raccoons, but I can't remember in my life ever getting close enough to one
Which
to ever get scratched.
It happens. It happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, it happens. So even a scratch, even though rabies is transmitted through saliva, especially with raccoons, they have hands that they can stick in their mouth, that they can get their paws saliva and stuff like that. So even a scratch is something that we consider a bite.
Yeah.
So we want to make sure. So we have to do some testing with the animal. We take it down to San Joaquin and they test it for us.
Yeah. So what happens if my family pet is bitten by an animal that I suspect might have rabies?
Right. If the animal is able for us to be caught, we can test it and take it down to San Joaquin for a rabies test. And then your animal is placed in a quarantine for a certain amount of time, depending on its rabies status. So if it comes back negative, then you're released from quarantine. But if the animal that we tested comes back positive, depending on your rabies status, it's a 1 month or 6 month quarantine for wildlife exposure.
Okay. So it's not just an automatic death sentence.
No.
Okay. If you catch it early enough.
No, it's not. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, because there's those. There's a couple of famous people that had rabies, and there's these very complicated treatments that they received, and they were able to survive. But
Correct.
it's a very dangerous disease.
Yeah. So what we always suggest, and it's actually part of the rabies compendium in the state of California, is that if your animal comes in contact with wildlife, revaccinate it with rabies within 48 hours. Okay, so that helps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have any animals of your own?
I do. Right now I have 1 Chihuahua and 4 cats.
Wow.
So, and they're all shelter animals.
So you practice what you preach.
I do. I have two that are the Chihuahua, and one of my Manx cats is from Tuolumne County, and the other three are from different shelters I worked at in my career.
Yeah.
So I still have them, but yeah, they are all shelter animals.
So you got to answer the question. I'm sorry, a dog man or a cat man? Which is better? I'm putting you on the spot.
Yeah, putting me on the spot. They're both different, and they're both good. I'm a large dog guy. I don't have one right now, but I enjoy my Chihuahua now.
Yeah.
So it's something different. I've never had one. I've always had boxers. Yeah.
I'm the same way. Yeah. I grew up with big dumb dogs, and that was kind of always my thing. But my mother-in-law has this little terrier, I guess, really little dog. I love that thing. Yeah. It's like the best dog.
Yeah.
And I've never thought of myself as like a small dog person.
Oh,
I really like that dog.
Yeah, me neither. I go out and do yard work and cut some trees, and I had a Chihuahua with me. But she's a good dog. Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and I've learned more about what you do, and hopefully some of our community members have too.
All right. Thank you very much for having me, Ryan.
Yeah, come back. Come back anytime.
All right. Thank you.
All right.
Bye.
And thank you for joining us. Please join us again next week. We'll be talking about Tuolumne County and all the wonderful things that happen here. Thank you.